Hey guys, welcome back to class. Basically, I teach charisma. And what I want you to do is, if you're interested in improving yourself, whether you have anxiety, whether you actually have charisma yourself, or whether you're in between, follow me on Twitter at brycon_raw. I always post every month, sometimes bi-weekly, depending how busy I am. And then, of course, if you want to follow me on Instagram, sometimes I occasionally post as well at brycon_raw. All right, guys, stay tuned. Cheers. Alright guys, so basically what I've been talking about has been about the energy and the magnetism that charisma actually entails. So we talked about presence, the ability to control our emotions, thoughts, and reactions. Magnetism, the influence that we have within our atmosphere with our thought waves, our physical exertions, and our emotions, and our sexual energy with the sexual magnetism that we feel when we see people as well. So we can basically control our magnetism slash charisma. Now, I also spoke about affirmations and how this basically helps us practice our magnetism and charisma. Now, the importance of this is basically the repetition of the sayings that we have. And, again, I said, you can love yourself, you can love me, you're attracted to me, I'm attracted to you, so you can feel that energy. Why is this so important? So basically, with my background in criminology, I wanted to be a criminal profile and a criminal investigator, specifically with serial killers. I find them very fascinating, actually. And my mom always wanted me to do something with the FBI or the CIA. And I knew that people always fascinated me no matter what, even if they had antisocial behavior or not. So what I basically have, dedicated the last, undergraduate program that I've done was find why these individuals are the way that they are. And sometimes it could be external factors such as the socioeconomic status that they have and also the genetic predisposition. And basically what this means is that our behavior is basically under control of our genes. And this means that basically if we have ancestors that have been aggressive, we most likely, more often than not, will be aggressive ourselves. So again, just going into that. Now, this is not a determining factor. Now, this is called genetic determinism. Right? So our lives are determined as they are. This is a self-fulfilling prophecy and you can't do anything about it. Simple as that. Sorry. But what charisma does and allows you to do, what I've done, basically I was supposed to be a statistic. I wasn't supposed to be alive more than 23 years. I'm actually 24. Just recently just had a birthday. I wasn't supposed to graduate as well. I was supposed to be kicked out of school and just follow the footsteps of every other statistic as well. I said no, right? I followed this path and it brought me to the position that I am now. Of course, not to go too much in detail, but basically what happened was that there is continuity and stability of behaviors. So continuity is basically you have the same personality, but the behavior is different. Kind of just like an old man who was a troublemaker when he was younger now basically is yelling at a cat. So you wouldn't see an old man kind of, throwing firecrackers in a trash can or in a mailbox or something like that. It's just not the ideal of what society is. Just like the stability, basically is almost like a gangbanger who started out when he was 14 and is now 37 and is still doing the same behavior. Now, what we were talking about with the sexual energy is that society influences us to be sexual in a specific way because, of course, through public relations and psychology, they have the ability to do that. They have the ability to control our demeanor through subliminal messages and, of course, through marketing that they've actually researched throughout years. Now, what I'm going to do is kind of go into the scientific process of how charisma works and why charisma is so important. So this is basically going back into the biosocial background of our society. Now, what I want you to understand is that we have the ability to influence our environment just as our environment actually has the ability to influence us. So, if we are aggressive individuals, the environment will treat us as aggressive individuals. So that means that we will be labeled, or whatever reason, if we're attractive, then they will treat us as an attractive person. So that starts actually kind of filling in the gaps, right? We have these innate behaviors that we've actually had throughout the supportive parts of our conditioning. Now, what we're looking at is the ability to control this, the ability to create a new platform for us to actually grow. So, what we've seen with psychology, sociology, and criminology is that we are proactive people, right? We can actually create our own reality. We can be our architects. And basically, this is the interaction within our environments. And we choose the environment that we want to be in, kind of like the way that I did. I didn't want to be within a lower socioeconomic status. My family actually moved, and it gave me the opportunity to have resources to be successful. In regards to how I react, we all have different manners that we encode information. So we'll encode information, we'll process it, we'll basically research it, just like Google. We'll select the options, we'll see the options, we'll select one, and then we enact. So the proactive and the reaction is something that we have the ability to do with charisma, because we were talking about the presence and the magnetism that we have, the ability to exert our emotions, thought waves, and physical attributions within our environments, and the ability to actually control. So society has told us that we won't be successful for whatever reason, and we start believing that. Those are affirmations, but not from us. So something that I learned from Teal Swan, which is a highly recommendable person to actually watch on YouTube, was that for you to love yourself, you actually have to tell yourself that you love yourself 500 times a day. Simple as that. Now that sounds like almost impossible. It's like, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you. But is that anything different than what I've been telling you? Not really, because what I've actually said before, we have the current situation and the designated situation that we want to have, and our brain fills in that gaps. So the same thing with our success. We have an image of being successful, and we will find places, people, and any manner that we can actually reach that goal. Now, of course, sometimes we just have to be adaptable. Now, being adaptable doesn't mean that it's always good, because most oftentimes this is a trade-off. And of course, throughout history, we've seen that we've changed our mandibles, our foreheads, and stuff like that. So we can't actually bash people's skulls in with our own skulls, and we can't eat animals raw because we don't have those molars to actually eat a deer. We have to kill it, we have to skin it, we have to cook it, and then of course then we're ready. And then we can't even eat that because we have to use our fork and knife to do that. Now, other ways that we learn, of course, has been through conditioning, operant, classical, not to go too much into detail, learning through observation, and anything that has to do with our innate behaviors. So this is our genetic predisposition once again. So this is epigenetics and diathesis. So of course, being put in the same environment with someone else, our genes will basically react a certain way. So if I am in a situation where I'm going to be killed, for example, it's actually happened to me once before in Colombia where I was mugged at gunpoint, and my first reaction was to freeze. Now, someone who's a little bit more aggressive would most likely than not fight, and another person would, submit. And those are influences from our genes, and that's basically traits that we've learned from our parents as well, in addition to that. Now, the problem with believing in this is that we can use it to our advantage and we can't use it to our advantage, because of course if we're big, very athletic, then our environments will seek out of us to be athletic. Now, if we're small and we're supposed to be readers, then our environments will do the same thing. Our environments basically has this interplay with the genotypes and the environments. Genotypes just means our traits and any physical traits as well. And our environment basically is anything that's what have to be with our nature. So it's nature and nurture, not nature versus nurture. So if our parents have been successful and they read a lot of books, most likely we'll be successful and read a lot of books. Now, that's a passive idea of what can be. Now, what we're trying to do with charisma is be active. And this is very, very important, because once we know that we can create what we want, then there's nothing that can stop us from being actually successful in life. So the active mechanism behind that would be that our parents have not read, but we want to read. And reading is an indicator of success. Successful people read all the time. So, of course, if you look at this in many perspectives, of course, it kind of is like this self-concept of how people have been looking at you and reinforcing your behavior, as well as, anything that has to do with our IQ, our extroversion, because sometimes when we have low IQs and high extroversion, we are more inclined to do crazy stuff. Or the opposite, and it could be introverted and high IQ, or a combination of both. And that creates this state dependence, right? What biosocial has actually created was, labeling. I've done this behavior as a gangbanger, I've killed someone, or I have sold drugs, and I am inclined to repeat the same thing. And of course, that's the stability. Now, the continuity would be the population heterogeny. And that's basically, I've done something, I've basically tried marijuana or smoked the cigarettes, and I'm not really sure if I'll do that again. Basically, it's low self-esteem or low control, and this helps continuity because you change your behavior over time. But, your parents have smoked cigarettes, and you're more inclined to smoke cigarettes as well because of the influence. But it doesn't mean that you actually have to follow that. You don't have to follow in their footsteps. So that's what charisma actually does. It allows you to take a minute to think about what you're doing and then act. Influence people, influence yourself, influence your emotions, influence other people's emotions. And that's the persuasion behind charisma. Now, in the next segment, what we're going to do is basically just go into the dynamic of the masculine and feminine energy that we have together, right? And how our chemicals that we have within our brain, our dopamine, serotonin, testosterone, and estrogen, influence who we're attracted to. Kind of like what we talked about, our genetic predisposition. All right, guys, so I'm out and about what I just talked about.